Hey folks, thanks for joining us on Straight Talk Whiskey. This is episode number 2, and we're glad you came along today because we will be going to the Irish side of whiskey, and starting with, of course, how can we not, Jameson Irish whiskey. Now, Jameson gets its start in 1780 with John Jameson, as we know. It's on most of the bottles, but what isn't on most of the bottles is that John Jameson was actually a Scotsman. So that's just a little interesting note. Now, it's bottled at a standard 40% ABV, which is pretty standard for Irish blended whiskeys, of course. And the regulations state that it should be aged for 3 years. So we have that. This is a triple distilled spirit. Most Irish whiskeys are, but it isn't always the case. There are some distilleries, such as Cooley, that will only do double distillation, which is seen in most Scottish whiskies. But let's take a further look at where it's from, all that kind of good stuff, and then we'll get into the tasting. So Jameson, as you can probably figure out, is part of one of the biggest distilleries in the world. Middleton Distillery, Jameson Distillery, and Irish Distillers Ltd., which are all the same place, located in County Cork, Ireland, and they make Jameson, which is a pretty wide line, and I have 2 other Jamesons that we'll review later on, but it's a great place to start. Now, the mash bill, as we call it, is made up of malted and unmalted barley mixed with some grain whiskey. Now, what they do that's a little bit different than others is they'll take the malted barley, unmalted barley, and distill that in one batch, and then take their grain whiskey, which is mostly corn, and distill that separately. So once that is all done, and they age it for a minimum of 3 years, we're not sure exactly how long this whiskey in this bottle was matured for, but they'll pour it into a huge vat, and that's where they kind of marry together, and we get the blend, the Jameson Irish whiskey that we have today. Now, they mature this in 3 different types of casks. You have your bourbon barrels, your sherry butts, and port pipes. So, pretty interesting maturation techniques going on there. So, let's get right into it. Let's pour a glass. Lovely gold color coming on there, which is always nice to see. And just a little note, you see that the bottle is obviously green, and you may have, you know that if you've bought Jameson before, but you might not really internalize what that means. A lot of times, whiskey bottlers and distillers will put their whiskey in green bottles like this, or darker colored bottles that you might see similar to wine. And they do this usually to hide the color of the whiskey, which is actually a good thing, which means that there hasn't been any chill filtering or caramel coloring added, which we like that. But getting on to the Jameson. So we do have a nice gold color, as you can see here. It's beautiful. And now, let's get into the nose. Now, the first things I'm getting are kind of a floral note, like honey. Also, some of the malt, that malted barley that's in there, for sure, is coming in. Okay, yeah, going back for a second pass, you get some green apple, which is really kind of interesting. Yeah, it's a wonderful, light, fragrant smell. Wonderful. So let's give it a taste. Nice. Now, initially, we're getting the same as kind of the nose that we got, such as the last review, and you'll see this a lot. But a lot of that floral honey is coming into play. And this has to do a lot with the distillation process of this Jameson Irish whiskey, as well as most other Irish whiskeys. It's triple distilled, so what you get is a really heavy copper pot still influence and a really clean spirit, which produces kind of these fruity, clean notes, which is pretty nice. So let's go back for another. Now I'm starting to get some of that, refilled American bourbon barrels taste going on. So that's some of the oak wood going on, a little bit of vanilla. But I'm also getting sort of a, it's kind of like fresh baked bread, how to put that. I mean, you definitely get that smell, but that it really goes along nicely with the taste there. Now it's kind of interesting because in this blend, it's almost like the flavors kind of pop up one by one rather than coming as a whole, which is a little disjarring because you're not really sure what's going around. Your palate's kind of popping around. So I get some of these spicier pepper notes in a way. Also the barley and the oak, as we said. And definitely that green apple is there, but it all seems to sort of kind of speak for itself rather than coming together as a whole. Yep, that's exactly what I'm getting. Now, I don't do this for most whiskeys that are bottled at 40 ABV because they're pretty much watered down to a good point. But this one, I'm actually gonna put a drop of water in, and I'm gonna use my fancy little whiskey dropper here, just so I can really measure out exactly what I want to get, which is just a couple drops. It doesn't really need much. Anything more than that, and kind of like a good magician, things will start to disappear. But unfortunately for us whiskey lovers, lack of flavor is not a good thing. So, let's give this a little swirl. Kind of while that's settling down for just a minute, just give a shout out to the master distiller at Jameson Distillery, Bryant Nation, because despite what I'm going to tell you is my score for this particular bottle, Jameson does produce a very nice wide array of spirits, which we will get to, like I said. And their master blender is Billy Layton, which a lot of credit has to be given to him because there is so much, not only science, but it's like an art to create these kind of blends. So let's see if anything's changed now that we've added a little bit of water. You know, now sort of the spicier notes are kind of taking a back seat to more of the floral. The green apple is really coming in, but in the malt, kind of the creaminess, but also sort of like a clay earth. I don't know if you've ever had like a pottery class or something like that where you've used clay. It smells sort of like that. So let's give her a taste. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. In just that short period of time, adding a little bit of water really does change it up. The spicier notes, as we said, with the nose are starting to fade away a little bit. And getting more of the earthy, the fresh bread we talked about before. But still the same kind of thing. It's kind of just, you know, kind of like one of those pop-up games where you have a whack-a-mole. You know, a flavor pops up and there it's gone. The next one's coming up. So that's kind of what we're getting here. So, on the whole, it's not entirely full-bodied as we'd like with some whiskeys, and the flavor leaves pretty quickly. I'm not getting any really remembrance to what I just tasted because it goes that fast. Now, that being said, you do have to give credit to Jameson because of the versatility of the blend. Now, as you know, a lot of people will mix this with Coke, seltzer water, different cocktails. Some will put ice in it. Lots of different ways to drink whiskey, and especially in this Jameson, an Irish coffee would be wonderful, and that's probably what I'll do with a good portion of this. But I just want to make clear, don't let anybody tell you how to drink your whiskey. It's your money that you're putting in to buy this whiskey, and you can have it any way you want. Okay? I personally like to drink it natural as it is, right out of the bottle, just because when I'm tasting, I just really want to get, that distiller's intent, I would say. They put all of this time and energy into their process of producing a whiskey, and this is what they've given us. And I just like seeing exactly how they intended it to be. Ice, people usually want ice because they want to cool it down. There's other ways to do that. They make little stones now that you can pop in the freezer and then pop it out, and it'll chill it the same way. But what you get with ice is not only dilution, which you may not want, but it also numbs certain flavors, and you may not get the same experience as someone else who's drinking it neat. It's nothing bad, it's just however you want to drink it. It's really up to you. So, on that note, I think it's time to give this a score, and I believe it's fair to give it an 80 out of 100, and we'll have a score up here for you on the board, and we'll review everything that we've talked about, just in case you want to take a full snapshot of the nose, the palate, the type, which we've mentioned is an Irish blended whiskey, the palate, and the summary. And that's it for the second episode. I'm Nick for Straight Talk Whiskey, and please drink responsibly, and we'll see you next time.